Again, thank you for joining us tonight. We are excited to be here for another virtual admissions event. Um, my name is Jalay Bazemore, and I am the director of the Bridge program. And tonight I'm going to be joined by a few of my colleagues here, as well as several Bridge student scholars. Our goal tonight is to provide insight about the Bridge program. So again, welcome, and we'll get things started. I'm going to first start with our Bridge faculty panels, and I'm going to have them share a brief introduction. So faculty, if you can unmute yourself and tell the group your name, your pronoun, the role you play, and the number of years you've been here at Wooster School.
Sure, I'll start. My name is Barb Coleman. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I've been with the Bridge program for 10 years. And currently I am a Bridge teacher for grades 9 and 12. And I'm also a lead teacher at Wooster.
My name is Fran Havard. I am 10th grade Bridge. My pronouns are she and hers. And I have been with Wooster for 2 years now.
Hi, everyone. My name's Allison Washington. I use pronouns she, her, and I am teaching 8th grade Bridge this year, and I'm new to Worcester this year as well.
Thank you all. And I will give you my role. I also teach literacy, Bridge literacy for the 11th graders and currently working with the 9th graders. And this is also my 10th year working with the Bridge program. Before we get started with questions to our faculty panel, I just wanted to give like a brief overview of who we are when we talk about the Bridge program and who we serve. Bridge is a comprehensive academic support program that serves high achieving, and I say this with our scholars on board here, they are high achieving students who are neurodiverse, they learn differently. And so students in our program, we say students in our program are Worcester students first, and we'll talk more about what that means later through the responses from the faculty as well as the students. But I do want to say that our main objective in the Bridge program is to teach students the skills and strategies that they can use to navigate their world and to also foster a love of learning. So with that said, I'm going to kick off our first question to Barb Coleman. And Barb, could you tell us, how does the Bridge program fit into the overall learning support at Worcester School?
Thanks. I'm happy to answer that question. And I think I'll just go back to something you said a moment ago, which I think is at the heart of our program. Students who participate in Bridge are Worcester students first. We know that. But we also know that sometimes people need what they need, and we want to make sure that we're setting people up for success. That we're really making sure we're paying attention to their strengths, but also looking at those areas where partnership or support could really be beneficial. And so an analogy I like to use is like, you can go on a journey, and if you have a pair of socks that really work well, you might not see them in the shoe, you might not know about them, but you know when you don't have them. And when you do have them, your journey is better. It's more enjoyable, it's more successful, it's more comfortable. And that's how I feel about Bridge. Bridge is going to be working with the entire Worcester community in ways that we'll unpack a little bit in greater depth, the co-teaching model, but also through its own separate classes to really work with students on their identified areas for growth and also where they want to keep shining. And that partnership is going to include executive functioning support as well as skills-based opportunities in both literacy and STEM.
Thank you. I will keep that metaphor in my head, like socks. So, when we think about Bridge, we do want to unpack key elements so that anyone who is looking to participate in the Bridge program really understands the intentional design of the program. So I'm going to start with Allison. What are the key elements of a bridge class? And you particularly work in the middle school, so I want to get a sense of what does that look like for you?
Sure, I'll speak to you a little bit about what the key elements of a bridge class are for our eighth grade. Um, One of the most important elements is we use the time to backfill skills. So, based upon formal and informal assessments, we address the students' needs through um, it can look anything like small fluency groups or modeling of, reading comprehension strategies. It could be extra review and practice of math skills or extra practice with sentence writing. Another element that students in the bridge class, they work on their independent work. Each student is unique and support is provided as needed. Um, Another element would be students are encouraged to work with the feedback from their teachers. And they're also planning next steps, looking for places to improve. And finally, Bridge is really a place for self reflection. They all, work on setting goals for themselves, whether it involves executive functions or in other areas, but they are, really taking specific time to self reflect to see how they're doing in those areas.
Thank you for that. And I wanted to add on when we think about our middle school program, whether that's fifth grade up to eighth grade, our main objective is to remediate and ensure that our students have many of the gaps filled, again, backfilling skills. But there's also opportunity for students to accelerate their learning. So that's another element in our middle school program. Fran, can you answer the same question and speak to what the upper school elements are?
Sure, it it's similar to what Allison said in the sort of backfilling of things, but we look at it as in three ways. We're either reteaching sort of what happens in class, we're pre-teaching what they might see in a class, or we are sort of like coaching and working with them to develop next steps on longer assignments. Executive function, like Barb said, is a big piece of that class. Um, how so like we have certain routines in place, like what's the peak of the week. They have monthly calendars, daily calendars, reflections, like a lot of reflection work to help the growth around skills. um that at Bridge is a place we want our students to feel joy. We want them to feel happy. We have routines like reel of the week, in which sometimes it's just silly stuff like favorite cat video, in which we talk about it or talk about our likes and our interests. It's a place at this secondary level to really be known what kind of learner you are, know what kind of strengths you have, and how we can help that child, that student, to leverage those strengths in another class. So how do they sort of use those strengths? That's kind of the crux of the bridge class, is to help them identify those strengths so that when they go in another learning space, they feel more successful. But the elements of that class are the reteaching, the pre-teaching, the laughter, the all the stuff that comes together to help that student feel successful on their learning journey.
When we think about, so outside of the class, so we have our bridge class, and that meets several times a week. Out in the middle school, it meets more often than in the upper school. So right now in the eighth grade, our students have a bridge class that meets 6 times a week. And in the upper school, across the board, our students have a bridge class 4 times a week. And most often, those classes are meeting at the same time that other students would be in a foreign language class. So, students who participate in Bridge do have a foreign language waiver, and there's opportunity for them to start taking languages in 11th grade. And I think we'll get to that a little bit later. Um, but I'm going to jump back to you, Fran. And when we think about this next part of Bridge, so we have the class component, but now we're looking at Bridge as an opportunity for co-facilitation or co-teaching. So can you tell us a bit more about what does co-facilitation look like in bridge or between the bridge teacher and also the academic teachers?
So I'll divide this into two parts again. There's two parts in the sense of planning and then during the lesson. So when we're sort of on stage, what happens? Before the lessons, we often co-plan with teachers. So like the humanities teachers, I'll meet with once a week. We'll go through work. We'll go through work that the students have submitted. We'll go through different aspects of what is upcoming. We'll look at ways to differentiate those pieces. How can we use different thinking routines here to make it learning more visual? Where do we need a writing framework here? Anything that can help the learners be more successful in that space. We are doing in a pre-planning meeting. So, and then when we get to the class, we often like rotate around the room and facilitate. If it's a discussion, like we'll all lean in and help with the discussion. We'll all rotate and work with all the kids in that space. But when it comes to, the particular kids that are in the bridge program, I'm leaning in a little more heavily, trying to, facilitate some of their learning needs in that space. So I might, use proximity with a kid that needs more attention cues or redirection. Like we are working together and collaboratively in that space to help all learners.
Thank you for that. And Allison, when we think about accommodation, because our program, even though particularly in the middle school, even though we're still working to remediate um, like literacy and math skills with our students, we don't modify the curriculum at all. So can you tell us a little bit more what accommodated services look like?
Sure. Well, we try to look at it as like, how can we best set up each student for success? So we're not modifying, but we're putting the appropriate scaffolds in place for each student's unique needs. So I'd say that, the students, they have very specific and tailored accommodations to their needs to support them to feel success. Some examples of specific accommodations might be utilizing, graphic organizers. It might be um, providing structured notes, leveled questioning. Perhaps, assignments are being broken down and chunked. And like Fran was saying, pre-teaching, and then a lot of, review and reteaching happens as well.
Fran or Barb, did you want to add to that in terms of what that looks like in an upper school?
Yeah, I think developmentally we're going to see some different demands on students in the upper school, and so those accommodations are put in place. They're on a document, their educational plan, their Worcester educational plan. They can be it's a living document that can be added to at any point if something arises that would benefit the learner. But some of the more common ones we happen to see are maybe a separate location for focus during an assessment. Worcester's not a traditionally test-heavy school, but we do have assessments, more particularly, I would say, in the STEM areas, but they do occur. And also there's the use of extended time. And it's really important for students to be able to practice their accommodations, because if and when they might look at some college testing situations, it gives them an idea about what kind of accommodation they may use if an SAT or an ACT or a PSAT is going to be part of their future. I know that, things have changed in recent years in terms of requirements, after high school for admissions in college, but it's always good to have those opportunities to practice, and we encourage our students to do so.
All right. And so when we think of, so we've talked about the bridge class, we've talked about co-facilitation or co-teaching. There is this other element of bridge, and that is the consultation or instructional coaching. So Barb, can you share exactly what that means, what that looks like from the bridge collaborative approach with our other colleagues?
Yeah, from what I understand is that we are co-facilitators, but there's also a depth of knowledge and experience that we bring with us from our team to the greater Worcester community. And the reason why Bridge works so seamlessly and so well is that because everybody's on board. People really do agree and want to participate in instructional strategies that are going to not only work for our learners, but for actually everyone in place. So if we see that there's an opportunity to bring in some new pedagogy or a deeper understanding of something. For example, we might have an executive functioning layer that wasn't a part of something that was purely looked at through the lens of the academic content. We can suggest that, add that layer, and then help those teachers kind of use a different modality or think about their teaching in a way that might be more accessible to all learners. So I would say that that is one of the ways that we can do some instructional coaching and consultation. We also are always going to remind our team about the accommodations because there's a lot to keep track of. But since we're a smaller family within the larger Worcester community, we can really keep tabs on that and make sure that that could be folded into maybe an assessment situation. Maybe there's something that could be more successful and have more access to the learning through a simple tweak or a shift. And we're um, always ready to have that to lend. And I think our teams are always really ready to receive that as well.
Thank you. Allison, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I would agree. And I look at it as it's a partnership. We're working really together with all of the content teachers, and we're making decisions together of how we can best support our students' needs. In middle school, sometimes when we push into the classes, it will look like we might have literature circles happening, and one of us might have a group of kids, and then the other teacher might have the other. It could be station teaching in math or in um, English, whatever it may be. But we're always, the communication is constant. The student focused goal setting is always at the forefront of our conversations. So it seems to work really nicely.
Thank you for that. I'm going to have my final question. I see the students are ready, but I'm going to have one more question for the faculty here, and it has to do with the when we talk about like the program design, as particularly in the upper school, the intentional design as Bridge as a 4-year program. So I want to have Barb and Fran kind of chime in here. And this is a question that I'll also ask of our students as well, because we want to make sure that you get the student perspective. But starting with Barb and Fran, if you want to add, what do you see as the benefit of the program being this 4-year experience?
Mhm.
And why do you strongly encourage the continuity over time?
And I think that's a really important question. One of the things that I think matters almost to me most is that through the amount of time that we have with these really, really successful learners, we are able to develop relationships and a deep, deep understanding of them as learners to help them understand who they are as learners. Um, a ninth grader looks very different than a 12th grader. And our ninth grade program looks very different than our 12th grade program because we really do use a gradual release philosophy and approach so that students have an ability to receive services and partnership that's developmentally appropriate. So if someone is in ninth grade, which I have the pleasure of working with ninth graders this year, which is fantastic, I am probably going to be driving the bus, so to speak, a little bit more. And then as time goes on, we're going to hand those keys over and maybe co-pilot with students as they get a little bit older. But right now, ninth grade has different needs than a 12th grader, and academically, emotionally, with executive functioning skills levels. So we really want to be able to tailor the experience to evolve with the student and also with the increasing demands of the curriculum and life itself.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with Barb. You see the learners become more fluent in the strategies that they use to move towards greater independence. And it's sort of through the reflection process of Bridge and the programming that the students grow in that ability to use different skills when is required. So you see this gradual release idea where by the junior year, the students are utilizing those harder strategies that they've learned in ninth and 10th grade to have that fluency and find success with that support still in place. So it absolutely they have the support that they need to grow over those 4 years, and it reduces rather than increases over time.
Well, thank you all. We are going to now shift, so faculty don't leave because we will come back in the end. But now we're going to invite our scholars to join us. Are you all excited? Yay. Okay. So what I'm going to have our students do, you can come off mute. And so I want you to introduce yourself to our guests. State your name, your pronoun if you choose, grade, and where are you coming from, your hometown.
Hi, I guess I can start. I'm Tatiana Devins. I use she, her pronouns. This is my 4th year at Worcester. I'm in 12th grade, and I come from Darien, Connecticut.
My name is Brooks Fisher. This is my 12th year at Worcester. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm from Newtown, Connecticut.
I'm Abby. My pronouns are she, her. I'm an 11th grader at Worcester, and this is my 3rd year, and I live in Westport, Connecticut.
My name is Ian Brown. I am in 8th grade. This is my 3rd year at Worcester. And my hometown is Weston, Connecticut.
Thank you all. So Ian and Abby, I'm going to start with you. But any of the questions, any of you can answer, okay? So if you feel like you want to jump in and answer, you can answer. But I'm going to start with Ian and Abby. And I want to know, like, what does a day in the life of a student who participates in Bridge look like? So give us like a visual of your experience. What does your day look like?
Okay, so my day would be it's like kind of similar to everyone else, except we don't have Spanish and I have bridge class instead.
So tell us a little bit. So are you involved in some other things other than just your core academics? Do you have elective classes? Tell us a little bit more.
So we on some days we have bridge at the end of the day, but that's usually because we'll have like our maker space or maybe music.
And Abby, what does your day look like?
So my day starts off like everyone else. So we will all go to class together, and we'll like all just regular, except when they go to Spanish, I'll have bridge. But they sometimes go to bridge and they're like, I don't really want to go. So they'll go there, and then yeah, we're really mainstreamed except for the fact that we don't take a Spanish, but we're mainstreamed in everything else. We have the same history, chemistry, math, all that. So we're all equal in that way.
I think that that's what the core of the question is that your day is no different than other students. The addition is that you do have this bridge opportunity, right? But you're in same clubs if you choose to take a club, things like that. But yeah, so that stresses the bridge students or Wooster students first. So thank you for that. My next question is, what is a typical workload for students and how much time do you spend completing your work? So let's kick that off to Tatiana.
So obviously for every grade it is different. Like for me right now as a 12th grader, we're getting to the time where interim grades are due. And Worcester does this special thing for when you're in 12th grade. You have grades like sent to colleges in between trimesters instead of like being like, oh, this is the end of fall trimester, here's my grades. Worcester will send them in starting Friday for my colleges. So right now in 12th grade, the workload is a little bit lower. So we have all our grades in. But then for typically for 12th grade, I'd say I get a lot of my work done in Bridge. But like if I don't have Bridge, like, or if it's in the morning, I usually spend about somewhere around an hour on work. I mean, it's not that bad.
Ian, I know, you know, we were preparing questions, but for you, what did that look like for you? Like, how much time do you spend on homework? What's your typical workload?
Mm, usually, I probably for 8th grade, I don't spend a lot of like time on homework, but maybe like an hour or two.
And I feel like I want to get context, because this is a question that comes up for families. They want to know how much homework their kid is bringing home. Um, Recently, I was talking to a student who happens to be a bridge student, and they're coming to us. This is their first year, and they shared that it's not the amount of work that they have, it's the different type of work. So before Worcester, they felt overwhelmed with their workload because it really wasn't tapping into their strengths as students, right? Now the work that they receive is a lot different. Like they're it's really pulling on critical thinking. The student is able to show more what they know. So their approach to the work is totally different than where they were before. So when we think about workload at Worcester than where than what many students are used to. Um, I'm going to ask Brooks. Brooks, we haven't heard from you. So I want to get a sense of how your Bridge teachers support you in Bridge and also outside of Bridge. What does that look like for you?
So I feel like for in bridge class, they kind of help me with my work. Like whenever I have an assessment or like anything honestly that's assigned from a class that I'm struggling with, they'll always like help me with it, even if like I'm really discouraged with it. And they make sure also that I have like a work plan for bridge that day. So like we have this thing called 5 and 5 for bridge where we do write down on a notebook what we're doing in class that day. So for example, like put phone backpack, write down your work plan on the whiteboard, and then usually we'll have like a mini lesson, but that's besides that. But for outside of class, they kind of remind me to stay focused because I have Miss Bazemore for she's in our humanities class and Miss Coleman for physics and math. So whenever I'm kind of distracted, they'll kind of remind me to stay focused, and they'll also check on me during class, see if I'm understanding it.
Thank you so much. Ian, would you like to share? That's okay. What about you, Abby?
Yeah, so it's a lot different. So ninth and 10th grade, one way that my teacher supported me was that they were bridging into the classroom and they were taking notes while the teacher was talking. In 11th and 12th grade, it's not really like that, so you're kind of relying on your own to take the notes and try to keep up. But if I'm ever struggling with keeping up, they're usually like in bridge, and I said, and I'll advocate for myself, like, this is what I need to do. And they will know what like is going on and they'll have a sense and they can help me or advise me from there.
Thank you. Okay. So I'll come back to you, Ian. Would you like to share? I know like you are ready
Yeah.
to.
So the typical workload for me in 8th grade would be like my teachers or Miss Washington would pop in and out between classes. You on some of the days I usually will have her in like history or English or science, but she's always checking on me to see if I like get it or if I'm like, because sometimes I like not focused enough. But yeah, that's really that's it.
Thank you so much. Abby, how has the Bridge program allowed you to better understand yourself as a learner? Could you share a bit more about that?
Wait, say that again, Miss Bazemore. Sorry, you were cutting out.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I'm in a strange place right now. So my question was, how has the Bridge program allowed you to better understand yourself as a learner?
I think that ninth grade year when you started, it was a lot of executive functioning, and we were trying to find what worked for me and what didn't work for me. So we found out that I do better when I get the notes before, and I'm able to, kind of follow along while the teacher is teaching the notes. And so I don't have that feeling like, oh, I'm falling behind, I need to catch up, so let's rush and make mistakes. So kind of that like sense of security, and also just having like one way they helped me as a learner was like that they had confidence in me like when I was doing stuff, so it wasn't necessarily like academic, but like just my teachers having the confidence in me that I could push myself to go forward and grow as a learner.
Thank you for that. Um, I'm going to kick this one over to Tatiana. We'll start with you. And, and before we start with, I just want to give a preface that, some families have asked us, and some students asked us too, like, what is the stigma around like being in the school and being a student who is neurodiverse, right? And so we tend to say, there really isn't a stigma because of the way learning in general as a community. We all say that, all learners are jagged learners. And so we want to make sure that each student gets their needs met. But I want to get the student perspective. So, Tatiana, could you share with us, like, do you see yourself as different than other students who may not be in the Bridge program?
So personally, I've never found myself being different because my freshman year we all had to be in the gyms and like I would just go up to bridge, but people would like stay down at the gym. That's the only time that I felt like I was kind of different because the kids in the languages would stay at the gym and then I had to go up the hill to bridge. But otherwise, I really haven't. I mean, sometimes like some of my friends and stuff will still come up to bridge just to hang out and stuff when I'm in bridge if I don't have much to do. I mean, it's like a really open space too. Like people like join us for certain things. Like someone might even come up asking for help from one of the bridge teachers and they're not even in bridge. Like it's a very open space and like I never have felt like, oh, like I'm different. I have to go up to bridge while they go to like Spanish or whatever. I've never found it being that different.
Does any other student on this panel want to answer that question?
Yeah, I can. I think that almost bridge. It's honestly like I don't like take pride in it, but like honestly, I feel like it's almost like it helps me like not helps me. I think that bridge doesn't separate anyone from who they are like as a learner at Worcester. I feel like it's like you won't think that bridge is like almost like a different school almost. I don't know how to describe it, but like because some people may think like, oh, you're in bridge, like you may not be as smart as them. Like honestly, I feel like if you're in bridge, you're getting more than the students that are not in bridge.
So you were saying there's like almost like a sense of pride, like I'm learning about myself. Why would you feel stigma around that? Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, so why don't you share a little bit more? Tell us about, your social experiences. What are you involved in? We want to get a sense of that as well. So we've talked more about the academic. We definitely want to hear about your social experience. So Brooke, can you answer that question?
Yeah, for sure. I feel that like for my social experience, I feel that Bridge like makes me feel like connected with all my teachers and classmates. So like if I need to meet with a teacher about a card or some work that I need to redo or not redo or like touch it up, like I can email them or we could meet during a bridge period, and that's really useful actually. Um, is it for like all of Worcester too or just bridge?
All of us are. So what are you involved in? Like outside of
Uh,
just like the classroom, what are you involved in?
I feel like a lot of the grades, other grades, so I'm a freshman. I feel like it's really easy to connect with like sophomores, seniors, juniors. They're all really like welcoming too. So they're not like when I first came to high school, it was a little intimidating, but they were really welcoming about it. And if I need help, they let me know. I also really liked being associated with the admissions, like when a student shadowing me for bridge specifically. I like to like share my experience with other people too.
Awesome. And you've done a great job as a ambassador, like having students shadow you.
Thank you.
Ian, what are you involved in? Tell us a little bit more about your social life in the middle school.
So I'm involved in a bunch of sports. So a few of them are like soccer, lacrosse, and basketball. And one of the instruments I play is the trumpet. So I love music, but I prefer sports. But some other stuff I'm involved in is like I love when a person is shadowing me and like seeing like what it is to be like a bridge student, like it's instead of like a regular student.
Well, thank you for that. I'm going to end the student part. I'm going to bring everybody together, but I'm going to end the student part with a question. This is definitely going to go to you, Tatiana, because you're ready to fly, right? You're in 12th grade. You've been with me and Mrs. Coleman for like 4 years. So I want to ask you the same question I asked Mrs. Coleman and Miss Savard here. What do you see as the benefit of being in the program for the 4 years that you've been in the program? And can you tell us what's different, like compared to ninth and 10th and 11th and 12th grade? Can you shed more light on that for us?
Yeah, so as you said, I've been doing bridge for all the years that I was at Worcester. And obviously it was much different. For me, ninth grade isn't the same as like Brooks, like this year. But we still had bridge, we went up there. Even though we social distance, it would be like we would all get there and it would be like, okay, what do you guys need to work on? Is there something that we need to like revisit or anything? Like, is there anything you need to like go back and take a look at? Is there anything coming up for us? And um that's the same basically for sophomore year. And then junior, senior year is really when you have a difference. So my junior year is when we start like Miss Coleman would still come into our math class, and then that's when it starts slowing down. She would only come into my math class, whereas the other years she like we would have more supports going around, so they would have an extra hand of notes. So if I came and I was confused, I could be like, okay, Miss Coleman, could we compare notes or whatever? And then 12th grade, um basically what we do when we get there now, it's like laid back more. Like what we do is we get there, I mean, we'll like kind of settle in and like we usually do one of the visual pictures in the beginning where they'll put up a picture on the board and then we'll be like, oh, what do you think this is? And it would be like a picture trying to send a message, and then you have to guess it. And then that's kind of how we get started. And then we go sit down. And then at the beginning, Miss Bazemore and Miss Coleman will be like, we look at the calendar and we say, okay, what's coming up for you guys? Because at this point, we're all in different classes. Um, whereas freshman and sophomore year, you do humanities and all the same classes. And then for us, we bridge out starting junior year when we don't have humanities. And so we just put up on the board, what do we have coming up? Obviously, some of us will have aligning classes. I'm in a really difficult class, and I would usually come in and ask for help. Oh, can we like start looking at my reading ahead of time? I have a class that that meets once a week, so I will usually try to cover that and bridge, and then any other work. But some days it's like it's not as like high stakes, or we don't have that much in our playlist. So some days we'll just come in, we just kind of relax, and it's kind of like do whatever. Like some days, like you'll just plug in your headphones and listen to music, and like every day it's not like high stakes. Whereas like for the underclassmen, it's more like you're all working like on the same thing. So they'll just put it up on the board. You can write down notes.
Yeah. And so there's what I'm hearing from you is that as you go through the program, there's more opportunities for autonomy, but you also still have these checks, right? And working with you in 12th grade, we get to see, we call it the lab time, right? Because we help build those skills early in 9th and 10th grade. And by the time you leave us in 12th grade, you have had that more practice time on your own. So that is like the gradual release piece, right? Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask one last question of everyone on our panel, so anyone can answer this question, and then we'll open up for questions from our guests. So panelists, students, and faculty, what are the three most important things you think a prospective bridge student should know? So any student, any faculty can answer that. The
All
three
right,
most important things.
I'll just start it off. So three things that I would say, like for me when I first started Bridge, what was helpful is like number one is you're never judged for whatever you come in asking a question about. Like nobody's gonna be like, oh, that's like a stupid question. Number two is to like always like check on your accommodations, especially now that I'm like applying to colleges and like awaiting all that. Like Miss Coleman and I went over like, okay, these are the accommodations I have. I need to check in to make sure I still need these. So I would say constantly check in on your accommodations. I would say finally, just like, I mean, for me, for anybody coming in, I would say kind of like almost make yourself at home. Like this is a judge-free zone. It almost feels like we're all family. Like it's like the students, like for me and all the kids in my bridge class, I know them all so well because it's like we grew up in high school together. So it's like you almost become a bridge family.
I don't know how anyone's going to be able to follow that one, but that was pretty darn amazing. I would agree. And if you hear a beep, that's my oven, so don't be alarmed. I would say, I don't know top three things, but any three things that come to mind for me is in Bridge, you're going to be also really working toward your strengths and your passions. So anyone who's going to join the Bridge program is going to be encouraged to take risks, to put yourself out there, and to shine. Just keep shining. Secondly, build those relationships. It's important for students in the Bridge program to know that they are Wooster students, that Wooster is there for everyone to get to know everyone else, and people are eager to get to know you. They're going to want to know who you are, teachers and students. So build those relationships. And I think the third thing to know is that every single person is unique in their learning journey. We are all neurodiverse. We all come with our own particular set of skills and interests, and also areas for growth. So own who you are, and say it out loud and be proud about it, and just keep on going forward.
Thank you. Ian, you said you wanted to add?
I think I don't have three important things, but I have one, and I feel like as a bridge student, you have to be really flexible because you could get a little amount of work on some days, and some days you could get a lot of work, and you just have to adjust.
Thank you for that. Brooks?
Yeah, I have two things. I think that bridge kind of makes me feel like I'm a part of a family almost. Like some ways, as some other people said, like I can go in there, ask a question without being judged. I also think that again, bridge will never make you feel separated. Like you'll always feel like you are a part of Worcester, like you are a part of the Worcester community, like you're a general. Like you'll never, I don't think you'll ever feel that way.
I'll chime in. I think a prospective bridge student should know that they will get very comfortable advocating for themselves, um, establish solid relationships, and again, uncover strengths that they will draw on, you know, in their future.
Thank you for that. Again, if you have any questions about Bridge, you can always reach out to our missions team. Can share more about steps for any family that is interested in exploring more about Bridge. So thank you so much, and we wish you all well.